All right. Well, hey, I want to thank everyone for being here today. Really excited about today's guest presenter. My name is Ryan England. I'm the president of NETPA. We'll get into that a little bit more, but I just want to thank you for joining us for our presentation this month. First thing I want to do is I want to introduce our board. We've got most of us here today. Again, like I said, my name is Ryan England. I'm the president of NETPA. I'm also the founder and CEO of Core Matters, where we help companies implement our core fit hiring system so they can hire better people faster. With us today is Vera Lee. She's part of workforce development with the state of Arizona. She works with Arizona at Work. If you're on this call, you probably know Vera Lee. She probably doesn't need the introduction, but she's very involved at the state level on working with employers as well as job seekers to connect them to gainful employment. Jose is our treasurer. He's with Mercy Care, and he works with a lot of community partners to help them get both employees and get the employers' positions filled. He's our treasurer. Cameron works with membership. He's with ZipRecruiter. He's an agency relationship manager, really a consultant, works with a lot of organizations to help them increase their hiring results, their recruiting results through targeted advertising spends, as well as more of a consultant role on how they can improve their cost per hire and employee retention. And finally, Maggie, again, just like Vera Lee, if you've been around NETPA at all, you know Maggie. She's an economic development manager. She's very well connected, and she has been with NETPA for over 10 years. A little bit about NETPA. Our core values, we've recently redefined these, and our focus is on connecting the underserved to the right employers. We really understand that there is a huge gap in between underserved communities and the employers looking to hire those people. And we really want to facilitate ways for them to better connect, better communicate, and ultimately find gainful employment. We also believe in growing our community. We're really focused on Arizona. A lot of our efforts are here in Maricopa County and just helping local employers connect to job seekers. And then we like to think outside the box. We like to do what's unconventional. For a lot of years, we were meeting in person. Last year caused us to come online, and we found that we are increasing engagement. We are increasing turnout in our events by being online. It just makes things easier for people. And so we'll be doing this for a little while. But together with our community partners, we recognize job seekers with barriers and challenges, and we connect them to long-term gainful employment. And our focus is really to partner with 50 local companies and help them to improve their hiring, improve their retention by hiring people that want long-term gainful employment. Quick little plug on NETPA. We are a membership organization. We do these monthly events for free. This is our way of giving back to the community, connecting our community partners and job seekers with employers, and also delivering really great educational content for our employers, like what we're going to do today. So I want to introduce Kevin McCloskey. He's the Director of Partnership Development with Disability Solutions. He's our guest speaker today, and he's going to give us 10 tips for hiring talent with disabilities. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and give this over to Kevin.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. This is my second time presenting to this group, so very excited to share the information. And I'm going to go off camera in a second. I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to go through the presentation, and then I'd love a little interaction afterwards, you know, a Q&A session. We're here to learn. So any questions that you have, no question's a bad one. I just want to make sure we have that opportunity to learn as much as possible. So let me go ahead and share. You guys can see my screen now?
Looks good. Good.
All right, perfect. So this is 10 reasons for disability hiring, some 10 tips you're going to learn today. Again, my name is Kevin McCloskey. I'm the Director of Partnership Development with Disability Solutions. I'm based out of Connecticut, but we are actually US and Canada company. So we work nationwide. We all work remotely, even before COVID. And what we do is we help our employer clients in their efforts in really going out there and attracting and hiring talent with disabilities. And we do that by developing some really great relationships within the community, whether it's federal, state, or local talent partners, again, all across the country and into Canada. I also do a lot of education like this. So we do a lot of education on the benefits of hiring talent with disabilities and really help our employers with some tools to help them best engage and support potential and current employees who may happen to have a disability. I've been working with Pepsi for about 8 years now on their Pepsi Act's Achieving Change Together initiative to hire people with disabilities. In that 8 years, we've hired over 2,000 individuals with disabilities into their plants all across the country. And we recently expanded into their other brand, which is Frito-Lay. We started 2 pilot sites down in Southern California. We've been there for about 2 months. We've already increased their applicants with disabilities. We doubled the applicants with disabilities from the previous 2 years. And we have 5 hires on the board right now in 2 months. And the previous 2 years, they've only hired 3 people. So in 2 months, we've been able to almost double what they've done in the previous 2 years. So very exciting stuff there. So I'm with Disability Solutions. If you look on the logo on their bottom right, we are Disability Solutions at Ability Beyond. So Ability Beyond is a nonprofit organization based out of Connecticut and New York. And it's been around for over 60 years, providing all types of services to individuals with disabilities. So we have about 100 different residential facilities. We have back to work programs, we have your day programs, you name it, we're probably doing it, really focusing on supporting individuals with all types of disabilities. Our motto is changing minds and changing lives. As I said earlier, we do a lot of education up front with the employers, again, a lot of education, talk about our success stories, some proven methods that really show that we are hiring talent with disabilities, and that talent is a great benefit for the employers, and they're retaining those individuals and being just a really great part of their overall workforce. And that results in changing lives of the job seekers with disabilities who turn into successful employees working in these competitive roles for the clients that we work with. Quick plug for our Disability Solutions Career Center. This is how we do that proactive outreach for the employers that we work with. We're not just posting jobs and they get stale and they're not really available anymore. We are pulling the jobs from each of these employer sites several times a day. So they're live jobs. And we push those out to over 8,000 different talent partners all across the country. Those talent partners include high schools, colleges, voc rehab, workforce centers, veteran groups, any organization that is somehow touching a job seeker with disability. We're getting the word out that these companies are with us and they are hiring. And then again, we hire all the way from warehouse to scientists and everything, and I'll get into that to a second. So these are all fresh jobs, competitive employment. We are helping not just check the box, but again, we're helping these companies find some really great talent, and that talent so happens to have a disability. All right, so a couple things we're going to learn today. As I said, I mentioned to Ryan earlier, I like to go through some regular knowledge of what is a disability, the market value, the talent value, all these wonderful things that support hiring people with disabilities. And then we'll talk about some of those tips. Are you a federal contractor? What's that mean? And what you should be doing? We want to change your disability viewpoint. We're going to talk about a little bit about accommodations and increasing self-identifications within your company. Accommodations is one of those words that comes up all the times in trainings where everyone thinks someone with a disability is going to need an accommodation, where it's just not true, or it's not going to change the job. It's not going to break your bank. So we'll get into that in a second. I'll take a look at how your websites and your systems and your overall brand can affect how you're hiring people with disabilities. We'll talk about outreach, which I just talked about reaching out to different community-based organizations, making those relationships and bettering those relationships to both help both sides. And then overall, we're going to let you know how people with disabilities will make your business better. And again, I love that Q&A session. We're here to learn, so we'll have an open dialogue afterwards. All right, so the first thing I'd like to start with is, what is a disability? So the definition is very broad. We tend to think of those typically when you say someone with a disability. We often hear someone in a wheelchair or someone has autism, but we want to really broaden that definition for you today. We'll start with the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Defines a disability as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. It's also a person who has a history or record of such impairment, a person who is perceived by others as having such an impairment, or a mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, and activities. So a few things I want to point out here are, the key takeaways is that it covers both physical and mental, right? And it limits one or more major life activities. And again, it could also be a person with a history or a record of such impairment that they possibly gotten over. All right, and let's talk about invisible disabilities. So in addition to those physical disabilities, we have hidden disabilities such as depression, PTSD, anxiety disorders, ADD, ADHD, all examples of hidden disabilities. And many are kind of surprised that these actually fit the definition of a disability. So again, that's why education is very important with us. We like to use celebrities. We live in a celebrity culture, so we like to use celebrities to demonstrate the different types of disabilities out there. So you got Tom Cruise on your bottom left there. He's my favorite actor. He appears in several of my presentations, as you might see. So Tom Cruise has dyslexia and really struggled as a young adult. He struggled all through school. And as a young adult, he wanted to become an actor. And obviously a huge part of acting is reading and writing scripts, something that he struggled with his whole life and continues to. So what he did is when he went into auditions, Tom Cruise would go in and ask the casting director all types of questions to really gain some intel on what made these characters. What was the situation that happened before this scene? What's his relationship with the other actor, actress? Again, grabbed all this intel from the casting director and was able to read the lines, but also improvise and add a lot of lines and ad-lib, which really blew away the casting directors and the directors. And that's how he became very famous and kind of, again, blew away those casting directors to get those roles. To this day, he still has scripts read aloud to him. He has assistants that help him with it. He just come up with other ways to get around that disability to become successful, which a lot of individuals with disabilities are able to do. On the top left, we got Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She's from Seinfeld and Veep fame. She is a cancer survivor. And if you go back to that definition from before, a cancer survivor always is a big kind of light bulb in people's minds. Why does that fit the definition of disability? First of all, it limits one or more major life activities. And it's also a person with a history or record of a disability. So therefore, people with cancer and cancer survivors definitely fit into that category of having a disability. Top right, you got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who many people know. And he spoke openly about his depression as a young adult, kind of around his, lower 20s. He played football very successfully for the University of Miami, but got injured and struggled getting back to where he wanted to be successful. And that was kind of what his career path was. And it was, a big yield sign with him when he got the injury. So he didn't know what to do. And he was very depressed and open about that about 2 or 3 years ago and how he battled with it and overcame it as well. And then Keith is not here today, but that is my colleague, Keith Meadows. And Keith has a hidden disability, and that's asthma. So again, asthma, typically known as a medical condition, but again, go back to that definition, it limits one or major life activities. And again, Keith Meadows right there, perfectly fine. You wouldn't notice he has anything going on in his life. But if you went on a hike with him or you present with him like I do, he loses his breath pretty quickly, and he's very dependent on his inhaler and keeps it in his pocket every time. So even though it's 90% of the time he's fine, it does affect one or more of his life's functions. So therefore, that's why Keith fits that category. So again, dyslexia, ADD, depression, cancer survivor, all invisible disabilities. And you can see at the top of that presentation there, that 70% of all disabilities are actually invisible or not readily noticeable. So again, we always like to say, you're hiring people with disabilities, you probably have people with disabilities working for you right now, and you have absolutely no idea. And again, we shock a lot of people when we mention that the conditions on your screen, classify as a disability. Most of these people themselves really don't know that they are considered a person with a disability, and they're not going ahead and checking that box that I have a disability when applying for a job or as an employee, something that federal contractors and employers are really looking for people to do. So let's go to tip number 1. This is person first language. And this is another question we typically get, how do we address a person with a disability? It's kind of a funny question, think about it. And as you'll hear throughout this presentation, I prefer to use person first language. Everyone's a little different. There's a little, I wouldn't say controversy around it, but everyone's a little different with their opinions and likes and dislikes and what they suggest. But again, we choose using person first language with really an emphasis on trying to get away from saying some of these other words, like the disabled, the handicapped. Still hear the R word, unfortunately, around the in and outside the workplace. Special people, challenged people, crippled people. Again, I think there's a little bit of a negative label associated with each of these words, especially when we're talking about employment. When you say the disabled car on the side of the highway, as you can see in the top right picture, that means the car's not working, it's not functioning properly. So calling a person disabled, not exactly the same thing, but pretty close. Again, that's why we choose putting the person first, or honestly keeping the disability off altogether. I don't call Keith with asthma or Keith with a disability. I just call him Keith. And we're seeing a little bit of headway in the employer side as well. I got Major League Baseball's logo on there. They used to have the disabled list that you might be all familiar with if you're a baseball fan. And about 2 years ago, they changed that to the injured list. And they made that change out of concern that term disabled for injured players really falsely compares them with disabilities and also an inability to actually participate in those sports. So again, it's tip number one, and something you really can make a change on right now, changing your language. When you do that, your family, friends, and coworkers will do the same. There's tip number one. All right, so let's talk about some myths and stigmas that we typically hear around people with disabilities. And we still, we're in 2021 now. The world's changed a lot in the last year. But we do still hear some of these when we're talking to not just our family and friends, but at Disability Solutions, we hear this when we're starting work with reaching out to companies we want to work with. And a few things we typically hear, which is very shocking, is that we don't hire people with disabilities, or people with disabilities can't do our jobs. Now, I ask you to think about, what if you replace that with any other diversity group? What if you said women couldn't do our jobs, or we don't hire women? For some strange reason, companies and people are really still comfortable openly saying this to us as reasons not to hire people with disabilities. And I can honestly guarantee you, with the work I've done, with Disability Solutions over the 8 years, I can guarantee you that the right person with a disability can absolutely do each and every one of your jobs that you have. Again, we've hired everyone from the mailroom to the boardroom. Like I said earlier, warehouse workers, technicians, mechanics, delivery drivers, engineers, scientists, managers, so on and so forth, all with some type of disability. So we're helping our clients, or our employer clients, really find the right talent for the right job. Got Chris Rock on your screen today. And recently, a couple months ago, he opened up about being diagnosed with a nonverbal learning disorder. And it really made it difficult for him to understand some of those nonverbal signs. So I was like, say, he probably would have had a lot of trouble being in a sales role, or maybe a customer service role. But again, he was able to find some success on his own career path as a comedian actor. And I enjoy his work myself. So we like to say, again, around those myths and stigmas around people with disabilities, not every individual is going to have autism or utilizes a wheelchair. Only 7% of people with disabilities utilize a wheelchair. There's a lot of stigma around mental health illnesses as well. I like to say that Hollywood and the news does a really good job about shining a light on the negative side of mental health. So again, today I want to challenge you to really change that thinking. As citizens of the world, you have a really opportunity to break some of these myths and stigmas and change your minds with us. All right, let's look at opportunity. So 1 in 4 of Americans have some type of disability, which makes them the largest talent group in the United States. And they are an untapped talent. Again, there's not a lot of companies absolutely going out and trying to recruit and hire people with disabilities. It really falls out of their whole recruitment strategy. Again, that's our job, to make sure it's a part of your strategy to go out and recruit and hire people with disabilities. And we're seeing a really good thing now, right? Companies are just literally like dying for any applicants at this point. People aren't going back to work. They're switching their whole lifestyle. They don't want to go commute 3 hours a day to go to the office anymore. So companies are really having a struggle finding great talent right now, and they're losing great talent as well if they're not being flexible within their workforce. So here we come. Like I just said with Frito, we're seeing a great opportunity to actually tap into this pool of talent that Frito hasn't in the past. I mean, the applicants are very low, hires are very low, and we started reaching out to these 100 different organizations in this area where we're kicking off this project. All senior seen an impact that, again, people with disabilities qualify for these roles, and they're getting hired into these roles. So really good stuff there. And the unemployment rate on the bottom there, it is from pre-COVID. Obviously, things are a little shaky right now, but these numbers would pretty still match up besides the actual rate itself. The one thing I want to point out is people with disabilities, the unemployment rate for them is typically double that of those without. And again, few of those things have a lot to deal with those fears and stigmas that employers still have around recruiting people with disabilities. They're also, might just do a part-time or a temporary job. That might be the only opportunity for them. They also have like struggles with possibly needing transportation to go to the school or to go to the work. So a lack of transportation or lack of, needing that medical devices or something medical at their home to be able to do that job. So they can't go into work. Therefore, they kind of can't get a job. And again, with COVID, we've seen some great opportunities now that jobs that employers told us they couldn't do from home. All of a sudden, the world changed, and a lot of us went home and worked and did it pretty successfully. And some businesses didn't survive, and a lot of them did, thanks to being able to work from home. So that's really a silver lining for COVID for people with disabilities, is something that they've been begging for years and years and years, and constantly we're told, no, you can't do that from home. Suddenly we're able to know, which is a great thing and a great opportunity for talent with disabilities. So again, the largest talent pool out there, it's got this diverse background. You're getting, again, transitioning high school students who might not be ready for high school or college, their secondary education, and they haven't, got any of those unhealthy work habits, I like to say, yet, all the way to baby boomers now who are aging into disabilities. So you got a lot of different talent there all across the board, and not just really great talent. You got a lot of diversity. So again, over the last year, diversity has really skyrocketed to the top of what employers are looking for, which is great. It's a great thing. And employers, again, are struggling to really hire diverse people, people with a diverse background, excuse me. So, when it comes to diversity, tons of studies out there that show it increases productivity and creativity. Another thing it does affect is your internal and external reputation as a company. So again, employers are always looking for innovative ways to tap into these diverse populations. And as I like to say, disabilities don't discriminate. So when you're hiring people with disabilities, you are going to increase your diversity all across the board, as you can see in those numbers there. We work with a company called Lind, used to be named Praxair, it's actually out of Connecticut here, but with offices and jobs all across the country. And we've hired close to 50 individuals with disabilities over the last year and a half or so. And the background of those individuals is great. Not only have a disability, but I think it's about 20% are African American, 12% are Hispanic, about 50% more women. So it just shows that when you're hiring people with disabilities, you're also increasing diversity all across the board. So it's a win-win for everyone. And one of my favorite slides is the market value. So, 1 in 4 of Americans have some type of disability, largest talent pool in the United States. And that talent pool comes with a lot of not people with disabilities, but their friends and families as well. So there's a spending power worth way over $645 billion now for people with disabilities and their family members. There's a study that shows 87% of the public would rather do business with companies that hire people with disabilities. Again, I was not sure if the other 13% decided what they want to do. I think they're neutral or so. And then out of 70 million families out there, there are 20 million families that have at least one member of their family with a disability. So again, there's a lot of opportunity for some great customers out there. For one, I always talk about how my family really supports Pepsi. I've been working with Pepsi for 8 years. I was a Coke drinker. Obviously, I definitely prefer a Coca-Cola over a Pepsi, but I don't anymore. I switch brands. I drink Aquafina water. My kids get Gatorade when they're going to their soccer events over Powerade. I eat Frito-Lay chips. I support the brand, and you'll see that all across the country and all across this group of individuals. They are very supportive of the companies and employers that are actually supporting them and getting them employed, and donating money and whatever. It's a large population, and they definitely take notice. All right, tip number 3 is: are you a federal contractor? So the first step to understand whether your employer or you are a federal contractor or a subcontractor is to really take a look, and you'd be surprised how many employers are actual federal contractors but don't realize they are, or maybe at a headquarter level they do, but when you go to the local site, they might not know. So as a federal contractor, you are really required to go out, recruit, and hire people with disabilities, along with all the other diversity groups. You're also responsible for creating an affirmative action plan, known as an AAP. You got to do that every year. Really great information to know, because if you're not successfully recruiting and hire people with disabilities, you really run the risk of having an embarrassing audit from the government agency called the OFCCP. They are in charge of making sure you are doing a great job to diversify your workforce. So federal contractors are defined as individuals or employers who enter into a contract with the United States. That could be any department or agency. So say you have a DMV office has a Pepsi soda machine in it. That could pretty much count as being a federal contractor. To perform any specific job, supply labor, materials, or for the sale of products and services. Good rule of thumb here is if your company has over 500 employees and has any contracts with the government totaling at least $50,000, you are most likely a federal contractor. Most companies in the Fortune 500 are federal contractors. And if you don't know, definitely ask a supervisor or someone up the chain. But you can definitely look on your application process. If you have that, are you a veteran or are you a person with disability? Check yes, no, or I wish not to answer. That pretty much makes you a federal contractor, because that's something you need to be asking and something you need to be tracking for success as well. All right, more on being a federal contractor. So let's pretend you just found out you're a federal contractor and you should be out there recruiting and hiring people with disabilities. Or maybe you did know and you just haven't been doing it. So the legal teeth behind what you need to know as a federal contractor is Section 503 of the Rehab Act. And this states that you need to be able to track how many people with disabilities apply, are hired, along with tracking the success of your outreach efforts to talent with disabilities. Again, that's where we come in. We do that outreach for our employers, and we're not just doing it to check the box. We're just making sure we're finding great talent, and those numbers are going up every month. Again, this is where that check yes, no, or do not wish to answer if you have a disability during that application process, or maybe the new hire paperwork really comes into play. So not only do you need to be hiring, you're supposed to be hiring about 7% of people with disabilities into your company, but it's actually 7% of each job group level. So let's pretend you are a warehouse or something like that, and you have warehouse workers, a sales team, and a management team. There should be, if you have 100 warehouse workers, 7 of them should not just have a disability, but be comfortable checking, yes, I have a disability on that application process. Same with management and same with the sales team. So 7% of people with disabilities should be in your workforce or every job group. Again, I always like to say these regulations are designed to give talent with disabilities a fair chance at employment. It's not to scare employers into finding ways around the regulations, as we've seen before. So you really want to use them as a resource to you and find out how you can better your outreach and hiring efforts as a company. Excuse me. All right, here we're going to tip number 4 is change your view of disability. So I ran through some stats earlier, but information on your screen is pretty important to know, shifting the narrative of your view of disability employment. So again, we told you that most of the time people think of someone in a wheelchair as their concept as a disability. It's the marker in the parking spots and stuff like that. But again, only about 7 to 8% of people with disability utilize a wheelchair. So we want to broaden your view and your understanding of what a disability is. If we continue with the percentages, again, 70% of disabilities are hidden, which we talked about earlier. These are mental illnesses, diabetes, cancer survivor, to reiterate all these disabilities that are invisible. And just because you don't have a disability or weren't born with a disability, it doesn't mean that you can't acquire one in the future. One of my favorite grim stats here is you are more likely to acquire a disability by the age of 65 than you are to pass away by that age. So it's a bit of a morbid stat there, but again, the goal is to open up your mind and help you and your employees understand and get past that person in a wheelchair view of disability. We also have a couple examples here. We got Shaquem Griffin. I believe he's still in the NFL. I think he's on the practice squad now. He plays for the Seattle Seahawks, and he has one hand, a noticeable physical disability. We have Tom Hanks there. It's a double shot there. He's a veteran in this picture, acting as a veteran, but he also has type 2 diabetes, which is an invisible diabetes. And my father-in-law has diabetes. Before I met him or seen him go through some of the struggles as a person with disability, I really just thought it was they just needed a snack here and there and took some shots. I really didn't know much about it, but I've seen him. He, not again going back to like Keith with his asthma and affecting major life activities. 90% of the time, my father-in-law is fine, but he's like crashed sometimes, and I see how it just wipes out his whole day. And he was a very up person with GE, had a great job, and luckily his employer was flexible with some of those days where he just had to call in sick because he was up all night because his numbers just dropped and really for no reason. So he had to get himself better for that day. And again, happens maybe 4 times a year that it's significantly impacting his life, and sometimes it's just a kind of minor inconvenience. So something to think about there. Oops, sorry about that. All right, tip number 5, I told you we talk about accommodations. So when we talk with businesses interested in hiring people with disabilities, again, I think I mentioned this before, but so many questions about accommodations, and it seems to be just a fear, this A word they say, and they're terrified. To be successful with a disability hiring program, we need you to understand that disability definitely does not equal accommodations. Not every person you will hire with a disability will need an accommodation. It's quite the contrary, actually. People with disabilities needing accommodations are actually close to those without. Again, going back to COVID, a lot of us went home. A lot of us got accommodations. We probably didn't have to get a doctor's note or fill out all this crazy paperwork that people with disabilities have to. You got maybe an extra screen for your new home office, or you got a Wi-Fi set up. You got all these different things that weren't really a part of your job, but they were accommodating to you because you had to work from home. So again, we want to make you really remember that people with disabilities does not equal accommodations. Going back to Pepsi, I wish I had another company to talk about so much, but we hired about 2,000 people with Pepsi with disabilities, and honestly, it was less that I can probably count the accommodations we needed on both hands, and they were easy accommodations to fix that cost nothing to the company. Really, really simple stuff. So again, the stigma of disability equals accommodations is really what prevents many good employers from actually moving forward with their program to hire people with disabilities. They really they tend to focus on worry about the focus on hiring people with disabilities, that they would spend hundreds of dollars on accommodations. So again, break that thought process altogether. So when we talk about accommodations, so again, some people might need accommodations. So again, not every person with disability needs accommodation, but let's talk about what's actually going to cost them. We're talking competitive employment here. So the person you hire is still going to have to meet all qualifications of the job. They're going to have to perform all the essential functions of the job, but they also just might have a disability. So if we get past that disturbing stereotype of every person with a disability needs an accommodation, just really start looking at your accommodation policy in general. Many hiring managers and local teams do not. And we do a lot of discovery work with employers that we work with. So we go on their website and take a look at their policies. We take a look at the process. And believe it, more times than not, you'll call a number on the website and the career page for a company to request an accommodation, and either doesn't get picked up or it goes to a full mailbox, or if you use the email is never returned, or typically it goes up to someone very, very, very important that really kind of doesn't lose that, or it loses eyesight on that actual accommodation. So a lot of employers might be just losing some individuals early on in the process that are talented and would be a good fit for that job. But just that accommodation process is just kind of legal language that they throw up there and they never really think about it. And it's a really huge turnoff for the job seekers that we worked with. And one thing that these terrified HR groups typically forget is the word that should come before accommodation, which is reasonable. So here we have the definition of what a reasonable accommodation is. Want you to keep in mind that, every reasonable accommodation isn't designed to give a person with a disability an advantage over others. It's really designed to give them, again, an equal, fair chance opportunity for those without disabilities. Again, a very common misunderstanding. The accommodation shouldn't do that. 80% of all accommodations are typically under $500, and 50% of all accommodations are $0, which is based on data we received from our employer partners. It takes a lot of money to actually turn over an individual. So if you have a really talented individual and you're going to spend $500 to keep them on the job, typically it's about $10,000 to turn over someone at a company. So think about that for a second. It's cost savings if you have a really good person. Definitely want to point out that during the last year, during COVID, again, a lot of us without disabilities received those reasonable accommodations from working from home. Like I said before, Wi-Fi, hotspots, monitors, time off, and working from home in general. All right, so another concern we've heard from employers is people with disabilities aren't selecting that they have a disability when they come in. Or, that's a part of, as a federal contractor, what they need to be tracking. How many people are doing it? How many people we're hiring, both applicants and hires. And there's a stigma from people with disabilities that they don't want to check that box. So employers really have to give them a reason to check it because it's not mandatory. They can select, I do not wish to answer. And a lot of them do as fear of being stigmatized and not being hired and it being used against them in the hiring process. So how to really increase those self-identifications becomes with really being an employer of choice. So by increasing self-identifications, we're talking about, again, people who are checking that box that says they are a person with disability. Again, data that the government wants to see and you want to increase as an employer. So really, you got to think about, is your workplace accepting of diversity and people with disabilities? And a lot of companies say, yes, look at our policy, but the policy isn't what really is your workplace, right? So what your workplace is, what are your working environments? If that answer is no, and you're not really sure, then, that is a very clear one reason why your numbers are low in the first place. Word definitely spreads fast in the culture. If your culture isn't the best at your employer, typically we like to look at, are there any photos or videos of people with disabilities on your website? Are you active in the disability community? Are you volunteering? Are you donating money? Are you actually going to hiring events that these nonprofits might maybe putting on? Again, by being active, I don't mean, again, just maybe donating some $100 here and there. We're talking about, again, going to job fairs, being committed, having relationships with our entire team. Again, attend some of those open houses, those job fairs. A lot of companies or organizations are looking for resume reviews, speaking regularly with those contacts. Actually including disability in your recruiting is a huge piece about it. Again, many companies are not. They're losing that great talent out there. And these partnerships can definitely help you tremendously. We'll get into that a little bit more about like Goodwill and Wounded Warrior Project, VR. Also, there's an online company portal where existing employees can update their status. So you got to look at that. Is it easy to actually go in and say, yes, I have a disability? So with some education, we're working with Bristol Myers Squibb right now on an internal self-ID campaign, and where they interviewed individuals who work for them already with disabilities and explaining their situation, their disability, how they've been successful in their work, how Bristol Myers Squibb has supported them in their employment journey. And that's used to send out to the whole company to get people to understand why it's important to go in and self-identify as a person with a disability. Because again, this is good for the disability community to see. This company is actually doing it. They hire people with disabilities. So when people go to apply for jobs, they're going to select, yes, I have a disability, because they're proud and they're excited to work for a company that supports them. Ultimately, people really have to be comfortable with you if you want them to self-identify, both as an applicant and an employee. So steps that you can take to move you closer will definitely increase those numbers. And again, let's talk about why job seekers and employees do not disclose. They really don't disclose disability or don't check yes on that form for 3 reasons. And those 3 reasons are fear, education, and company culture. So first, they are afraid that you're going to use it against them in the hiring process and really single them out. Again, like I said, a myth that applicants with disabilities truly believe. Second, if they have diabetes or they are a cancer survivor, they might not even know that their condition actually fits the definition of a person with a disability. So they aren't going to check that box, which is why companies who utilize disability education and being active in the community are really important, because those employees really understand that and why the need to check that box. And third, as we mentioned before, it's company culture. So bad culture usually equals low self-IDs, and a poor disability community reputation, or really an unknown reputation, can also equal low self-IDs as well. So fear, education, and company culture will help those. All right, so websites are important tip here for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, is your website accessible? And by accessible, it must be available to everyone. And many websites, quite simply, are definitely not. Again, something that we do with our clients. Your site needs to be able to be used by screen readers, such as JAWS, for those who are blind. If you haven't heard of JAWS or what JAWS does while on a website, I encourage you to look it up on YouTube. There's a really cool videos that show how inaccessible websites can be. If you're not familiar with JAWS, it's a program that reads out everything on your site to a person who is blind, so they know where to navigate and what information to input. So if your links and pictures are generically labeled in the coding or confusing, that person won't be able to access your site or possibly go ahead and apply for a job with their company. So your website needs to comply with what's called WCAG guidelines at a minimum. It'd really be a great idea to run a website accessibility test on your site. If you haven't done one before, especially, some companies have done it, a couple of years ago, or they haven't done it at all. Again, the site might look really awesome to you, but it could be a nightmare for others. And it could cost you business, and it could cost you some really great talent there. Another great area that websites that is often neglected is to have people with disabilities reflected on your pages. Something I mentioned before. It's all about your brand. If you want to recruit people with disabilities, they should have a role on your website. Now, you might be thinking about how do you do that? Again, what you talked about, 70% of disabilities are hidden. So companies typically just slap on a stock photo of a person in a wheelchair to go up there. And I've seen the same couple of pictures on a few different websites. I'm like, that's not your employee. I've seen that person before. I suppose you can do that. It's not about a stock photo, but it's really a great idea, as we've seen with Bristol Myers Squibb and Pepsi and Synchrony. I'm going to show you a video here in a second. You really should have some real employees up there with their success stories. Again, employees who are comfortable sharing their stories, and because those stories are powerful. Their videos, pictures are great, but videos really are powerful and send a great message to the community that you're trying to recruit. And they don't need to be a physical disability that shows up really easily. There could be hidden disabilities and share their story or why the company is a great fit. Again, that's why videos are great. Much better way to bring in the disability population. And one thing to keep in mind, that 99% of companies really aren't doing this. So as a person with disability, again, 1 in 4 have some kind of disability, you're really going to stand out. You can also leverage your ERGs if you have one on your website. Talk about what they do in the community, and let them know and help your ERG actually be a part of recruiting and hiring people with disabilities as well, and sharing their story. Again, this will play much better than that stock photo of a person with a disability, and or nothing at all, really. As I said, Synchrony does a great job. Here's their picture on my slide right here to the right. They're talking about disability and featuring employees with disabilities. Also, if you have a diversity page, this is something we see all the time in our discovery work. There'll be a great CEO diversity pledge. We're going to hire this, we're going to hire that. And guess what? Disability is often forgotten or left out of that diversity pledge. We've seen it way too many times. So be careful with that one. And as you guys know now, right, no group of people is immune from disability, and it cuts across all diversity metrics all across the board. So it happens more often than not. And it's definitely something to keep in mind as you're checking on your websites. And why is accessibility important? We just want to go back to the example of those who are blind trying to navigate inaccessible websites. So you'll find a few stats on your screen from, I think this is from 2019 by the Nucleus Research with feedback from those who are blind. That is really pretty eye-opening. Not only is accessibility important from the recruiting and talent perspective, but you could be really losing lots of money as a business, not just applicants here. So nearly 70% of online transactions are abandoned by people who are blind because of accessibility issues. Think about that, 70%. Excuse me. Yeah, people wanting to buy your products and actually giving you money, but they cannot do so on your website. So this is kind of a nightmare for a business, right? 70% of sites have accessibility issues, which is a whopping high percentage there. But actually, the most striking number is the largest one out there. $6.9 billion are lost to competitors. $6.9 billion a year are lost to your competitor. So if your site isn't accessible, people definitely stop on that website and go somewhere else. It's true for recruiting as well. Also from the e-commerce perspective, all the more reason to stay on top of it and to know where you stand as far as your websites go. Again, these numbers are just from a study of people who are blind. It doesn't even take into effect who are colorblind, those who are deaf, and can't access your videos because they don't have captions, and so on and so forth. Again, it's a huge population, and they just simply go over to the competitor. All right, and one of my most and least favorite at the same time is the system. So your applicant tracking systems. The short answer to this might be that you have no idea whether your system has holes or not, because usually it's handled by a third party and they always tell you great things, and you probably never apply to a job yourself, as we find often. So you can see the funnel right there. You start with all the people who apply to the positions and whittle it down to those that you hire. Every business does this, and it's a good thing for sure. But what is important here in between these points, so you got the applicant and the hire. There can also be a lot of negativity, negative impact on people with disabilities, and they are certainly falling out of this process. So let's say your company has an online application, and then maybe they have an assessment or some type of quiz attached to that application. Then you might do a phone interview, then an on-site interview, and then you get to the hire. So if you look at your data, it might tell you that 99% of people with disabilities, those who check the yes box, aren't making it past the assessment, while 50% of those without disabilities are getting through. Huge opportunity, or maybe revisit that assessment, as we've done with plenty of different employers that we work with. Take a look at that assessment, like what's going on? Why are people with disabilities failing? Why are people with disabilities failing at the phone interview stage or the interview stage? Where's the drop off? Companies who say, hey, we want to hire people with disabilities, sometimes they don't even look at their systems. And I guarantee you, with the work we've done, there's a lot of issues, and it's not just for people with disabilities. There's a lot of issues with some of these systems. We also see a problem with a lot of companies that hiring managers have a large amount of flexibility and power, which isn't that much of a bad thing, but also come back to bite you if they aren't inclusive and or rejecting people in really random and discriminatory ways. Also, if you are in human resources or TA, you should apply to your company once a year to really stay on top of the application process. Again, in the discovery work that we do, they always say, oh, yeah, things work, it's great, it does this, it does that. And then we find out, it doesn't do that anymore. Did you know that? There's a new quiz, there's a new video. So not just apply for one job, apply for a couple jobs. Use a fake name, sample application. The difference between what you talk about in meetings and the actual process from a job seeker standpoint can absolutely be quite different, especially if you worked there for a long time. Odds are that you probably won't remember your application process from 5 years ago. And it's really important to stay on top of that, especially in that field. We know TA, people who did not know there was still an assessment being administered for all their jobs. We've met people who actually failed those assessments in the company that they worked for. Not saying that you will have perfect memory or recall, but again, keeping in mind what the job seeker is going through really will open your eyes of the overall candidate experience and really how it affects your brand. Again, not only for people with disabilities, for everyone. So it's really important to check your systems and see where those holes are. All right, tip number 9 is make friends with the community-based organizations. A lot on this call, right? So we touched briefly briefly on this earlier, but these organizations really do hold the keys to becoming a successful company who hires people with disabilities. It's really great to connect with these organizations. Typically some of them might have a business rep or specifically someone who works with the disabilities. As we mentioned earlier, giving charity and giving money and connections for disabilities is really awesome. But we want to, broaden that a little bit and think about how these connections can be used for talent and recruiting. Your local workforce agency, again, VR, Veterans Affairs, Goodwill, colleges, high schools, really fantastic resources for you. They interact with thousands of people with disabilities looking for work. Again, if your company's hiring entry level or C-suite, there's always organizations that have the talent for you that, they so may happen to have some type of disability. They have candidates with master's degrees, MBAs, and people just entering the workforce and everyone in between. So it's really important to develop these relationships. There's tons out there. Like I said, I try to hit on any community-based organization that somehow touches a job seeker with a disability, and there's tons and tons, especially in your area, as I know. And what we've seen from the employer side. So employers make a few mistakes. Community organizations do as well. And these relationships could be tough, but we want to make sure you're aware of the ones on the employer side so you can avoid them. The first step is to determine who owns the employer or community organization relationship. Who's going to respond to the emails and provide information when those requests come up. Really, if no one owns it or there isn't a point person, as we've seen, the connection usually goes sour, or your point person doesn't respond to anything or is too overburdened with business responsibilities. It could be a major issue as well. Also, we like to say treat it as a team too. So there could be a point person, but there should be a team of individuals making these relationships, maybe someone from ERG as well. Second, treat these connections as a relationship. I know Maggie from this wonderful organization reached out to me today, and I've had a great relationship with Maggie for years, and not everything's been perfect, right? There's some misfires and people didn't get hired and so on and so forth, but we treat it as a really good relationship. It's a partnership, right? Everything's not going to be successful, but communication really is key, really, really key. So the more that these organizations know about what you're looking for, how about your operation works, what talent level you need, the more consistently they're going to be able to provide you talent over the years. Again, they might not have the perfect fit for you right now, but they might in 3 months, they might in 2 years. I always like to say, help them help you. Another Tom Cruise line. You invite them, make sure you invite them to your events, show them recognition, and they'll refer you some great talent and really become an advocate for you. I like to say they become an extension of your HR team. They're out there recruiting for your employer because they know you're going to hire people with disabilities and you do a good job at it. You can do some of the things I mentioned earlier, like those open houses or recruiting events. You can do facility tours so they can see the jobs in action. You can even tag each other on social media, share content. People love that nowadays. While it's essential to have a point person with communication, again, it's important to have that team. Make sure it's a passionate person. Make sure it's someone who's interested in hiring people with disabilities. I've worked with companies who send me the wrong point person. They just have no desire to do it whatsoever. And also they might leave for a promotion or go to another position or something like that. So make sure there's a good point person. Make sure there's really a team of a point person so that relationship continues to be a strength. And the last tip for today is that when you're hiring people with disabilities, you're going to add unique personalities. So every good business leader knows that it could be a little problematic to have the same people, the same thinking on the same team. These people are faced with some problems or challenges. They really don't think outside the box. They tend to do the same thing. As we stated earlier in one of the slides, diverse hiring increases creativity. So when you're adding people with disabilities to your team, it definitely brings a unique, really viewpoint to the problem solving and creative solutions, excuse me, that you're looking for. So people with disabilities, I like to say, are battle tested in the game of life. They have faced significant adversity. We've heard from all the job seekers that we work, just some really, really, heart-wrenching stories. We've heard people be called stupid, that will never amount to anything, that you'll never have a job or never have a real job. True and painful stories that we've heard from the job seekers that we work with, and we found them really great careers. So rising above this adversity, it makes those small business problems that might affect your day-to-day much easier. And again, always back to famous people throughout this presentation. Now I'll use it again. Not only to show that disability provides different thoughts, angles, it also could create some really great, awesome abilities and insights, as you can see here. I'll start, let's go to the bottom right first now. That is Franklin Roosevelt. Excuse me, I got a little cough here. But he showed the world he can hold the highest office in the land, and is also a person with a disability. Not only that, he created the March of Dimes, which led directly to the cure of polio and changing the future of lives of millions of people. Look at that. Bottom left, you got one of my favorite actors, Dan Aykroyd, from Ghostbusters and Blues Brothers. And he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and I think he came out publicly in the early 2000s. And he has stated several times in public that his disability really helped him create these two movies. He became obsessed with ghosts and policing and criminology, and he really immersed himself in every book he could find on those topics. His disability really became a huge asset for making a living. And I don't know about you, but I absolutely love Ghostbusters, and I'm glad that he had that disability to make that great movie. Top left, everyone knows the great Michael Jordan. He is diagnosed with ADHD, and everyone definitely is familiar with what they call his laser focus on the basketball court. Laser focus, not a typical attribute you think of when you first hear ADHD, but those with that disability can actually have what they call a hyper focus on something that they're truly passionate about. And I think that kind of worked out for Michael Jordan there. Top right, you got Jamie Brewer. She's an actor, and she has Down syndrome. And she obviously has been in lots of movies and TV roles. She's in that really scary show that I can't watch because it makes me frightened. I forgot what it's called. Something on Fox or FX. Really scary show. But she's been able to reach the highest levels of her profession. Obviously at the Emmys there, celebrating the great TV. So she continues to be very successful. And it isn't just celebrities. I know we use them all throughout the presentation, but it's not just celebrities of success. There are people definitely that now whose disabilities have given them some type of ability to really do something great. I ask you to open your mind just a little bit and provide an opportunity to these individuals with disabilities, and you will be certainly surprised, as we've seen with the employers that we work with. All right, I'm gonna look at time real quick. I think I'm doing okay. So I'm going to show you a quick video. I don't believe I showed this one last time, but even if I did, it's one of my favorite videos that I've done. And there's just a great impact on not only the employer side, but the job seeker / employee side, and then how to do it successfully. So here you go. This is from Synchrony. Hopefully. Oh, he's not on. Got it. It's coming. Sorry, guys. There we go.
The biggest challenge I faced in the past when looking for employment was whether or not they were going to give me a fair shake.
I couldn't get interviews. I couldn't get in the door.
You just could almost see it on the employer's face when I come rolling in. They just all of a sudden, they've already decided she's not going to fit.
People don't tend to give you a chance to prove yourself.
It was so awesome to come here to Synchrony and find out that, they're overlooking that.
Synchrony is a great example of a company that, doesn't pay lip service to an idea.
First and foremost, Synchrony's commitment to ensuring we have a diverse and inclusive culture and body of employees that represent our marketplace. It's not only an altruistic pursuit. We do this because it's good business. A lot of the mistakes I thought we were going to make, we avoided because we were guided by experts. We hired Disability Solutions, and they were really able to shepherd us to engage in the community.
It's companies like Synchrony that provide us, the disability community, with the opportunity to showcase our talent and our values.
And Disability Solution, they trained me into finding out how to apply myself at a job.
It made me feel like I wasn't alone. It made me feel like there's other people out there. It's not just me, not happening to just me.
Keith Meadows, great coaching. Told me, helped me with the interview process, gave me confidence because he saw that I had an ability, not a disability.
It's a welcoming culture, and they feel that they're being evaluated based on their merits and their abilities, which is huge.
I have a learning disability, so I call it more of a learning ability because I think different than others. So I learn different in different ways. When somebody gives you just a little bit of confidence and even sees, doesn't look at negative parts, but looks at the positive, that's what gives you confidence.
Yeah, they're going to look at you and see, okay, he's in this chair. But if I portray confidence, then maybe not look at me in that manner.
It's been very inspiring, honestly. It's inspired me just seeing the work ethic and the drive, and the type of employees that we're recruiting through this program.
The next phase of our project, I think, will really shift to getting people hired to ensuring that we have an environment where people are growing and getting promoted.
My goal is to go up the ladder and show that I can, that you can be successful.
That even if I get out of this chair, which is my goal, that's my goal, is to get out of this chair. I would like to get out of this chair, but even at that, I think I still, would stay here.
I'm still working here, so I must be doing something right. So
I never would have thought that I would be in a position that I am now. I never even thought that I would be able to make a paycheck again.
So if you're struggling and you get the same, deer in the headlight look every time that you go into an employer, being deaf, blind, wheelchair, or some other sort of disability, here's your chance.
The main thing is never give up on yourself. Whatever job or employment that you want to go for, believe that you can get it. That's the first step.
No matter if you have a disability or not, you still have hope. And you can still accomplish whatever you set your mind to.
All right. So a great video there. And I wish we edited it out to talk about disability solutions because I think that sounds like a sales pitch, but hopefully it didn't. It's just really great hearing from the employees. We're able to go through a program, get hired, be successful. And I mentioned this throughout the presentation. It's funny. All those employees with disabilities that were hired are still there. And some of those leaders from Synchrony actually moved on to other roles or other companies. So again, we talk about retaining people with disabilities. They are very loyal. It's the right talent and they're a good fit. They'll remain on those jobs and be successful for your company. Moving down the line. All right, I'm going to go to video. Try and go back to video, and I got a little pop quiz for everyone. So you can either hit the chat bar on your menu bar, hit the chat, or feel free to talk. So can someone name an invisible disability?
Asthma.
Beautiful. Anyone else?
Diabetes.
All right. Anyone else?
Cancer.
All right. Good. All right. What percentage of people with disabilities utilizes a wheelchair?
I forgot.
Someone says 8%.
8%. Yep. It's about 7 to 8%. Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. And then easy one. Does disability equal accommodations? True or false?
False.
False. Nice. Thank you. And where can people with disabilities identify as a person with a disability within your company? That's a little different for you guys. But there's really 3 points where someone can identify as a person with disability. It's on the application process or the new hire process. Then there's also opportunity, should be in most companies' internal systems where they can go in, log in, they can change their address. They can also change their status of having a disability. That's part of that self-identification campaign. So with that said, we got a little quick review, 10 tips. So utilizing person first language, again, it's I won't say a controversial topic, but it's a little gray area. But again, you want to focus on not saying some of those words and really focus on putting the person first. Diversity within disability, as we learn, lots of different talent, lots of different diverse backgrounds. Your role as a federal contractor, change your disability viewpoint. Now, what is a disability? Disability does not mean accommodations, as we know now. There's definitely ways to increase your self-identification, starting with your brand and your website and your culture as well. Are your websites on point? Are they accessible to all people? Looking at your system challenges and your applicant tracking system, and then make friends with community-based organizations to find the talent. And I can guarantee you, people with disabilities will make your business better. So I'll throw up my contact information if you wish to reach out to me. But I want to thank Ryan, Maggie, and the whole team for inviting me here. And I'll open up to any questions.
Well, this is Maggie, and I just want to say thank you so very much. It was such good information, and it always feels good to have it reiterated, Kevin.
Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, and then in regards to Pepsi, I worked with Kevin on Pepsi for a couple of years, and when they say that Disability Solutions trained you, that is true. They train or they assist, if that's part of the solution, they assist in training in potential employees for jobs that they might be able to get. So it was pretty amazing, and I'm very impressed. Thank you so very much, Kevin.
Thank you, Maggie.
Yes, hello, Kevin Verily here. Wow, that was just amazing. Thank you so much. And I really love the use of your celebrities who have disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that, I didn't know about some of them, and that really brings it to life. And interestingly, I'm watching a program on the television at the moment called Line of Duty. It's based in the UK, but one of the key people in it has Down syndrome. And he's quite a celebrity in the UK. So I think that's so positive. So
great.
Again, very much enjoyed it. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I would also this is Maggie again, just explain that we'll also be sharing this. It was recorded, Kevin, and we'll be sharing it on LinkedIn if that's okay with you, with the clients that we serve, as well as who follows NETPA. So,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I always get a ton out of this, Kevin. Thank you so much for being here again. I don't see any questions, so I just want to echo again. Thank you for being here. Great information. I always learn something every time I hear you speak. We'll get this up on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days, and then we'll make sure to share it everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan.
Aaliyah asked a question to the panelists. I think it's just a good idea and just a reminder that we would be better. Absolutely. Our companies and our world would be better places if we provided additional opportunities to individuals from this very population. I get it, Leah. Absolutely. I agree. That's one of the reasons that I'm just so passionate about the work we do here at NETPA. And one of the reasons that we bring Kevin back again and again, because it's just such great information. All right. Well, thank you, Kevin. I'm going to turn this over to Verily now. Everybody see my screen okay?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect.
Hello, everyone. Thanks again, Kevin. So my name is Verily Keenan. My day job is a business services representative with Arizona at Work, Maricopa County. And I'd just like to say that I really welcome having Kevin's email once a month with all the new opportunities for people with disabilities. And I forward that to my network, to career advisors who work with job seekers, etc. So thank you, Kevin. I really welcome having that. And again, I circulate it. So now I'm just going to go over some resources for job seekers and employers. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'll talk about Arizona at Work. We are the statewide workforce development network. We help employers of all sizes and types recruit, develop, and retain the best employees for their needs. For job seekers throughout the state, we provide services and resources to help them pursue employment opportunities. So Arizona at Work Maricopa County has career centers in Glendale and Gilbert. We're open Monday to Friday, 8 until 5, and we have computers available for job seekers to use to search and apply for jobs, work on their resumes, etc. And we have many, many flyers for job opportunities for job seekers to pick up. So I'll mention Arizona Job Connection, or AJC. It's a statewide database of employment opportunities where job seekers can search and apply for jobs and post their resumes. Now, this morning I had a look on it. Interestingly, there are 70,000 jobs, this is statewide, available, and only 18,000 resumes. So what does that tell you? There's a lot of jobs and not enough job seekers. So employers can post their jobs in Arizona Job Connection, but as I said, not enough job seekers are actually applying to the jobs. And we're hearing every day from job seekers, they're finding it very challenging to fill. So it's really a great time to apply for a job, because we're hearing employers are offering sign-on bonuses and all sorts of inducements to get people to work for them. So again, great time to apply for a job. Next slide, please. So now I just want to talk about some of our online learning resources. We have just announced, in fact, this week was the first time we did this, our new expanded virtual employment academy. I mean, it's just great. It's a 4-hour online workshop. It's aimed at job seekers, goes over resumes, career searching, etc., etc. It's very, very comprehensive. And this is how job seekers actually enroll for that, www.maricopa.gov/find-a-job. So Employment Academy. Next slide, please, Ryan. Couple of other online offerings we have. There are 2 video tutorials. They're both 30 minutes. If you want to help with your resume and a cover letter, this is for you. And then if you're looking for your dream job, then again, this is for you. This second one has free tips to interview tips and help you. Oh, right. Okay. Help you get your dream job. So again, this is how you register. Next slide, please. I'm just going to mention Arizona Career Readiness Credential. This is a great credential to have on your resume. It does prepare job seekers for success. Employers love this. If you are AZRC certified, this is a great addition to your resume. And again, employers love it. So we can help with that as well. Same link here to apply. Next slide, please. Oh, some of you may know about this, but we have an incredible Job Blast newsletter. Comes out twice a week. If you're interested, if you haven't already signed up, it's AZ@work to 22828. And Job Blasts come out twice a week with lots of jobs and resources, etc. So it's a great free resource. In fact, all the resources we have are free. So how good is that? So that's the Job Blast. Next slide, please. Now, we have many wonderful community partners. Here's just a few of them. I'll just give a brief explanation. AZ Retail Careers, you can apply for, not surprisingly, jobs in retail. Best Companies AZ, they're a great website. You can search and apply for jobs. Career Connectors, wonderful organization. They hold virtual events and have hiring events as well. Chicanas por la Causa offer many training courses. Goodwill, of course, everyone's familiar with. They have lots of resources, career help, etc. And they organize virtual career fairs. Jobatising, local work, pipeline, all wonderful resources for jobs. So I'd encourage you to check them out. Thank you. Next slide, please. A couple of really interesting upcoming events. Next slide, please. First one, Arizona Tourism Virtual Hiring Event next Wednesday, June the 23rd from 9 until 10:30. As everyone knows, the tourism sector in Arizona has been really hurting. So this is a very positive event. So lots of hotels, restaurants, etc. Need staff. So this is a great event. It's actually co-sponsored by Pipeline AZ and the Arizona Office of Tourism. So a great event. Next slide, please. Career Connectors and us are collaborating with with Pipeline AZ again for this great event. It is next Thursday between 9 and 12. And the fastest growing industries are IT, finance, healthcare, construction, and manufacturing. There are going to be 5 subject matter experts who provide sector updates, trends, etc. 22 employers will be participating, including Honor Health, GoDaddy, Robinhood, Pulte Group, and Dexcom. So please attend. It's great. It's going to be great. Again, it's virtual. Next slide, please. Okay. So please save the date. Our next event will be on Friday, July the 16th at 10, of course, same time, same place. And we're excited to say we're going to have a healthcare employer panel. We will be sending out a flyer, but the details I have today are we have representatives from 5 companies: Lifeguard Behavioral Wellness, Chicanas por la Causa, Intermountain Centers for Human Development, Valleywise Health, and Southwark Network. Altogether, we have 14 panelists from these great companies and organizations. We're very excited, as I said, and the flyer will be going out soon. So next slide, please. Well, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much, Kevin, for your great presentation. And everybody have a great and safe weekend. Thank you again.